unlike certain other difficult 8-bit games, I've never managed to beat Ninja Ryuukenden. The later stages are just too frustrating. So let's see how far I can get playing for an hour. And there we go, 5-3. I was actually hoping to make it to 6, but getting knocked into the holes I'm jumping over by enemies that spawn while I'm jumping just wore me down. The origins of Ninja Ryuukenden are an arcade beat-em-up. I remember seeing a lot of these machines back in the day, but nobody really interested in playing them. It might have been something to do with the frustrating control scheme. Of course, that arcade game only got one console port at the time, to the Atari Lynx. For other systems, Tecmo chose to make a brand new game using the same title. That title, Ryuukenden, basically means Legend of the Dragon Sword. It's unclear why they chose Gaiden as a US title, but I've seen Japanese fans confused by the fact that there are side stories in the Western games. One of the big things in this game is that Tecmo chose to reuse the cinematic presentation techniques they developed for Captain Tsubasa. So Ninja Ryuukenden has these really elaborate cutscenes. We're all used to playing a stage and then getting an extra long story dump, but in 1988, this is brand new. Even if the story wasn't especially strong, players had never seen anything like it before. The story is that Ryu Hayabusa is a ninja living in the US and fighting crime. When his father is killed in a duel, a conspiracy to collect some statues that will be used to revive a demon lord is uncovered. And Ryu sets off on a globe-trotting adventure to fight the evil organization. The game that Tecmo made for consoles is one of the most beloved 8-bit action platformers. If you were to ask someone for a top 5 list of the best NES games not by Nintendo, Ninja Gaiden's probably making the cut. But it's also known for being insanely difficult. One of those games that just hurts people. And for that reason, I prefer the sequels. I feel like Ninja Ryuukenden 2 and 3 are just better designed. But what we have here is a great foundation that's just weakened a bit by some less than thoughtful level design. As you're playing, the A button jumps and the B button slashes your sword, and I find that sometimes the sword isn't quite as responsive as I'd like. Especially when it comes to crouch slashing. Keep in mind I'm playing with unmodified hardware and viewing it on a CRT, so it's not like I've got anything introducing delay for my gameplay. And despite that, the timing for slashing some animals running on the ground is just really tight. On all the stages there's some kind of background object that you can slash to reveal items. If it's just hovering there and doing nothing, it's probably what you can hit. These pots are just worth some points. What you really want are these icons that give you some additional ninja power. That power gets used up with your special attacks, and the blue icons are worth 5 points while the red icons are worth 10. Then there are the special attacks. You use most of the attacks by hitting up and A. The blue shuriken just goes out in a straight line. While it's weak, I prefer it over its big brother for being cheaper and having better range. The orange shuriken goes out and comes back like a boomerang, but if it collides with something as it's going out, then it gets destroyed. So you have worse range with the same strength of attack, and it costs more than the blue shuriken. A bit more helpful is the fire wheel. That shoots a stream of fire in an upward arc. Since that hits enemies that aren't in line with you, it's really the most useful weapon. It has a larger form too. This fire wheel makes you invulnerable for a short time, and anything that gets near you gets hit. The most devastating and also frustrating special weapon is the spinning slash. It changes your jump attack into a ball of death, but it costs you some of that ninja power. So once you pick this up, don't bother collecting any other items. You're just costing yourself power that way. If you can get this attack all the way to a boss, then it hits the boss on every single frame, basically wiping out their life bar in one blow. One of the big gimmicks of Ninja Ryuukenden is that you can stick to walls. You can even climb them directly if there's a ladder on them, but more often than not you're going to want to jump back and forth. It is possible to scale a wall by jumping off it and back to it, but you can't quite make it to the platform at the top, so this is really only useful in one place in the game. The way that enemies are placed in the game is the real source of the challenge, and a lot of that comes down to how they spawn. Enemies spawn according to your position in the level. When you're X pixels in, an enemy appears. So if you're standing on the enemy's spawn spot and then kill them, another one spawns in immediately. This is already kind of annoying, but the game has a tendency to place those spawn spots right where you'd need to jump over a hole. In those cases, you'll probably want to wait for the enemy, then jump over them and the hole at the same time. Of course, this is assuming that when you land on the other side, something else hasn't spawned in. There's an absolutely enormous amount of knockback when you get hit, too, and on the later levels, when you're doing a lot of tricky platforming, one hit is generally sufficient to kill you. You're going to get knocked back into so many holes. Even more annoyingly, when you're knocked back, you'll stick to walls that you collide with. There's a bad tendency then for the enemies that hit you to then hover around you so you can't get back off the wall. And when you try, they hit you and knock you right back onto the wall that you jumped off of. It really feels like the enemies were placed in Ninja Ryuukenden for maximum player frustration rather than good level design. At least the bosses are generally pretty good. They've got some very basic patterns, but they're also tough enough that they're not pushovers. It helps to remember that your sword can knock projectiles away. You only get 3 lives in Ninja Ryuukenden, but you have infinite continues. Just hit start on the game over screen. Of course, on the last stage, continuing at any point up to and including the final boss sends you way back, all the way to the beginning of a very long run. It's one of those things that can make you throw your controller. Obviously, the game was very successful, though the first one seems to be the hardest one to get your hands on. I found that copies of its 2 Famicom sequels were much more readily available. There was also a bundling of the 3 games in the trilogy for the Super Famicom. However, that version were retooled to match the difficulty of the US games. That makes them much more difficult than the original Famicom titles. Also, a port of Natsume's Kage was titled Ninja Ryuukenden for the Game Boy. Those are all of the official releases in this series, but then there's another set of Ninja Ryuukenden games, and Ryu puts in appearances in other Tecmo games. There's even a direct-to-video animated sequel to the game. My feelings on Ninja Ryuukenden is it's good, but not great. I know that's a bit of a heresy for some people, but I feel like the poster child for 8-bit difficulty didn't get that reputation by being a fair game. And that brings it down in my eyes. I can understand why it was popular at the time. I also think that Tecmo improved on the formula with the sequels.